Good day, everyone. We are the Group 4 from BSTM 36 and we'll be discussing about our topic, negative economic impacts of tourism. The tourism industry generates substantial economic benefits to both host countries and tourist home countries because of exchange services and currencies. Especially in developing countries, one of the primary motivations for a region to promote itself as a tourism destination is expected as economic improvement. As with other impacts, these massive economic developments bring along positive and negative consequences. There are many hidden costs to tourism which can have unfavorable effects on host community. Often rich countries are able to profit from tourists than the poor ones, whereas least developed have the most urgent need for income, employment, and general rise of standard of living by means of tourism. They are at least able to realize these benefits. Among the reasons for this large-scale transfer of tourism revenues out of these host countries and exclusion of local business and products are leakage, enclave tourism, infrastructure costs, increasing prices, economic dependence, and seasonal character of jobs.
Good evening, ma'am. My report is about negative economic impact of tourism leakage. Leakage is direct income for an area is the amount of tourist expenditure that remains locally after taxes, profits, and wages are paid outside the area and after imports are purchased. These subtracted amounts are called leakage. There are two main ways that leakage occurs. First is import leakage and the second is export leakage. Import leakage is when tourists demand standards of equipment, food, and other products that the host country cannot supply. Second is the average import-related leakage for most developing countries today is between 40 and 50% of gross tourism earnings for small economies and between 10% and 20% for most advanced and diversified economies. In export leakage, TNCs have substantial share in export leakage. Often, especially in poor developing destinations, they are the only ones that possess the necessary capital to invest in the construction of tourism infrastructure and facilities. As a consequence of this, an export leakage arises when overseas investors who finance the resorts and hotels take the profit back to the country of origin.
Enclave tourism refers to tourism development that generally operates within a clearly demarcated, self-contained environment. Local businesses often see their chances to earn income from tourists severely reduced by the creation of all-inclusive vacation packages. An example of enclave tourism is cruise ship industry. It is not difficult to imagine how many tourists are local and how many of them are foreign who go cruising. Particularly in the Caribbean, guests are highly encouraged to spend their time and money on board. When tourists remain for their entire stay at the cruise ship or resort, which provides everything they need and where they will make all the expenditures, not much opportunity is left for local people to profit from tourism. In fact, tourists hardly have any opportunities to communicate with local people or to contact with indigenous people is practically non-existent. The main characteristic of enclave tourism are inclusiveness and the totally controlled tourism environment by management. It can have a better service providers, but sometimes it can be very expensive as well because it is owned by millionaires and billionaires and they are expensive. So it is a smaller trickle down effect on the local economies.
Infrastructure costs. Tourism development can cost the local government and local taxpayers a great deal of money. Developers may want the government to improve the airports, the roads, and other infrastructure and possibly to provide tax breaks and other financial advantages, which are costly. Public resources spent on subsidized infrastructure or tax breaks may reduce government investment in other critical areas such as educational and health.
One of the obvious economic impact of tourism is that the very presence of tourism increases prices in the local area. Increasing demands for basic services and goods from tourists will often cause price hikes. That negatively affects local residents whose income does not increase proportionately. This makes it more difficult for them to meet their basic daily needs. Tourism development and the related rise in real estate demand may dramatically increase in building costs and land values. This means that the local people will be forced to move away from the area that tourism is located, known as gentrification.
Economic dependence. Diversification in an economy is a sign of health. However, if a country or region becomes dependent for its economic survival upon one industry, it can put major stress upon this industry as well as the people involved to perform well. What is economic dependence and its example? Economic dependence refers to the economic dependence of one person, company, country, or entity or another. For one thing or aspect to succeed, another must also succeed, deliver something or something must happen. They may be no funding or project if another person is not a financial succeed. The term may refer to whole nation, as in Saudi Arabia. Economics dependence on oil prices is worrying. Farmers may lose their crops if does not rain. Therefore, there is economic dependence on something happening, etc. Rainfall rather than another entity's well-being. Diversification lessens dependence. Companies should not get into situation in which there is economic dependence on one product. That is why they should diversify. Countries with little ability to explore other resources have embraced tourism as way to boost the economy. In the Gambia, for instance, 30% of workplace depends directly or indirectly on tourism, and small islands developing state percentages can range from 83% in the Maldives to 21% to the Seychelles and 34% in Jamaica. Over-reliance on tourism carries risk to tourism-dependent economies. Economic decision, the impact of natural disasters such as tropical storm and changing tourism patterns can all have devastating effect.
The graph displays the information from the table in a visual form. A pattern visible from this graph is that global tourism has increasing in popularity in a linear pattern overall as tourist arrival have been increasing on a global scale. With this graph, Europe is the most popular tourist destination. However, in the more recent times, it has become lower. overall compared to the boom in popularity of global tourism between 1960 and 2008. Since 2017, the air transport infrastructure is one of the most improved components in the index, with strong growth in scores across most regions, sub-regions, and economic development levels. However, much of this performance has comes from growing route capacity and the number of carriers operating. There are positive and negative economic impact of tourism. The positive are contributes to income and standard of living, improves local economy, increases employment opportunities, increases tax revenues, creates new business opportunities. For example, one of the positive economic impact of tourism is a foreign exchange earnings. For instance, an Australian tourist visiting Philippines went to a money changer in the airport and exchanged his/her foreign currency into Philippine peso. While the negative economic impact of tourism are increases price of goods and services, increases price of land and housing, increases cost of living, increases potential for imported labor, seasonal tourism creates high risk, under or unemployment issues. If there is a positive economic impact of tourism, there is also a negative impact of it, such as increased price of goods and services, which negatively affects local residents. Example is increasing of entrance fee.